"I know whose truck that is," I said out loud to no one, the words scraping my throat like gravel as the silver F-150 idled under the dead street lamp across from our house at 1:12 a.m., the dashboard glow lighting up a profile I'd recognized since sophomore year. My best friend Tyler, one hand on the wheel, the other holding his phone low, face turned toward our porch as if the dark itself could keep him honest. That was the first time the thought didn't just flicker through me like static, but landed with weight, like a tool dropped on concrete. I stood in our kitchen with the fridge door open, the light falling on a bowl of leftover chili and a half-drunk Bud Light, the air smelling faintly of dawn from the sink. And I watched him through the slit between the blinds while my wife, Erin, slept upstairs with the fan whirring and the white noise app making rain sounds we never had in suburban Dallas. You don't need to know everything about me up front, just that I'm the kind of man who inventories parts before starting a job. I sell HVAC systems to small contractors across North Texas, the kind of work where you shake hands at a diner off I-35, write orders on carbon copy pads even though everyone has DocuSign now, and you remember who shows up when the AC dies on a Saturday in July. That's how I met Tyler, actually. Two guys on the same Pee-wee team, both of us skinny and fast, me at corner and him at slot, and we stayed that way through Friday nights under stadium lights, then college dropouts, then blue-collar hustlers with decent teeth and a knack for reading people. And Erin, well, I met her on a Tuesday 7 years ago when my boss sent me to check an install in Mesquite. She was the office manager at the customer's shop, hair in a messy bun, sleeves pushed to her elbows, running the place with the kind of soft authority that makes grown men apologize for existing. She handed me an invoice and a post-it that said, "Check line set, prob a kink." And I proposed to her 18 months later with the ring tucked into a folded Whataburger napkin like I was delivering a crown in a paper cradle. Our wedding was in a rented hall that smelled faintly of Lysol and brisket. My dad danced with her mom. I cried during the vows because I always thought crying was honest, and Tyler stood beside me as best man, one palm resting on my shoulder while the photographer counted to 3. That's the version I replay when I can't sleep, the one where everything was plain and good, the one where Tyler was the kind of friend who would show up with jumper cables at 6 a.m. without asking a single why, and Erin was the woman who'd text me a photo of a grocery receipt with a little heart drawn around the coupons because she was proud she saved us $5 on yogurt. Life after that looked like a string of American postcards. Saturday farmers markets in Deep Ellum, where we always bought too many peaches. Cowboys games on TV with a tray of wings, me and Tyler yelling at the refs like they could hear us through the screen. Cookouts in our backyard with a Bluetooth speaker on the patio table. Erin in cut-off shorts flipping burgers, the neighbor kids chalking hopscotch grids on the driveway. Sunday morning pancakes where she'd dot chocolate chips into a smiley face just to make me roll my eyes. I'd pour black coffee and pretend to hate the sweetness while secretly thinking that if this was a movie, it was the part where you worry because nothing has gone wrong yet. I used to say Tyler was the brother I chose, and Erin used to say we were a little 3-person team, which at the time felt like a blessing and later would feel like a prophecy with its teeth bared. The first hairline crack was nothing, a thing you could ignore. One night after a long day of calls, Tyler came by with a case of Shiner and a look on his face like he'd eaten a secret. "Got a new client out in Garland," he said, flipping through a stack of invoices with the speed of a magician, and Erin laughed at some dumb joke he made about Texas drivers. I remember the way they both smiled, hers a shade brighter, his a shade longer, and I filed it away as one of those moments you don't pick at because you trust the paint will dry smooth. I've always believed that trust is like a thermostat. Set it at 72 and you don't touch it unless something feels off. I didn't touch it. Still, there were changes you couldn't label without sounding petty. Erin started going to late Pilates, which I thought was a brand of candle until I realized it meant a class at 8:30 p.m. in a strip mall where the nail salon closes at 7. She put Face ID on her phone because the company requires it now, and the lock screen became a curated garden I wasn't invited to. Her scent shifted from something powdery and warm to a sharper perfume, with a French name she never said out loud, just sprayed on her wrists before she tied her hair up high and told me not to wait up. I told myself we were just cycling through one of those married rhythms where the two of you are satellites around work and sleep, and that it would settle. Then, at a Sunday cookout, I saw it. Nothing big, nothing you could even prove. Just Tyler reaching for the tongs at the same time as Erin, his hand brushing her wrist, and both of them pulling back too quickly. a stutter that would have looked like courtesy if it hadn't arrived with silence. Later that night, I lay awake and thought about dumb details. The way Tyler had started parking on the street instead of pulling into the driveway like always. The way Aaron's phone, always face down, had picked up a new habit of vibrating once and then going absolutely still, as if a conversation lived under the floorboards. When the first real seed of doubt planted itself, it came wrapped in something banal. A credit card push notification at 11:43 p.m. for a charge at a hotel off the tollway I'd used for business travelers who overslept flights. I was in Austin overnight for a client dinner, staring out a Marriott window at a parking lot sea of taillights, and my phone buzzed in my palm. 8714. The text said, Aaron X, card ending 3182. Gas? I texted. Got it, babe, she replied instantly, like she'd been waiting with canned explanations in a drafts folder. It should have ended there, but the number snagged in my head like a burr. 8714 doesn't smell like gas. It smells like a hotel bar tab, 2 old fashions, a plate of sliders, tax. I told myself stories. She'd grabbed drinks with Kate from HR after yoga. She was celebrating a work milestone. She was being a person with a life I didn't need to audit. Then she sent me a photo of our cat, Peaches, asleep on the couch, time-stamped 3 minutes after the charge, the lamp behind her unnaturally bright, the angle slightly wrong, as if the photo had been taken earlier and held in reserve. A postcard from safety mailed out of sequence. That's when the air shifted. I didn't accuse, not then. I just started paying attention the way you do when you've misplaced a $100 bill and tell yourself it'll turn up if you retrace your steps slowly. The following weeks stitched themselves into a private ledger. I noticed everything. Her Apple Watch switched from a woven band I bought her to a black sport band she found in a drawer. The lunch receipts in her tote weren't from the places near her office, but from little spots off Greenville, where the bar stools are too close and the lights are strategically dim. Tyler, for his part, got weirder with his calendar. He started helping his mom on Wednesday nights, a noble act that would have touched me more if I hadn't known his mom spends her evenings watching Wheel of Fortune and calling him kiddo. He'd text me memes at 9 p.m. and be, like always, a steady stream of dumb jokes. But there'd be gaps in there that felt deliberate, as if both of them were building matching mazes and then pretending they'd gotten lost by accident. I told nobody, not my brother, not my barber, not the drywall in the garage. I was ashamed of the tiny voice in my head that had stopped saying, "Don't be paranoid," and started saying, "Be precise." So I got precise. I started saving things, screenshots of charges, a photo of her car's mileage in the morning versus at night, notes about the exact time the porch camera caught her keys in the door. I didn't want to be the guy who jumped at shadows and destroyed a marriage over nothing. I wanted to be the guy who could lay out a clean line of dots and say, this is what they add up to. None of that explains how, at 1:12 a.m. on a sticky Thursday in May, I ended up in my kitchen with the refrigerator humming like a witness while Tyler's truck idled under our street lamp. If you have ever lived long enough with doubt, you know it trains your senses. You can hear a key turn from 2 rooms away. I heard tires roll slow across asphalt. I heard the tiniest tap of a text hitting someone's phone upstairs, light, like a fingernail on glass. I didn't go outside like a fool and bang on his window. I didn't storm up the stairs and throw open every door. I stood still and watched. He was leaning toward his center console, scrolling, looking up at our porch. After a full minute, he drove away. Not fast, just like a man completing his part in a ritual and then returning to his life. I stood there with the Bud Light sweating in my palm and thought, maybe I am insane. Maybe he just cares. And then Erin's phone pinged again upstairs, and the rain sounds on her app hiccuped and smoothed out. The next morning at breakfast, she made pancakes with browned edges and said, "You're quiet." And I said, "Did I wake you last night?" And she said, "No, slept like a baby." And the lie was so gentle it almost sounded like love. She kissed my cheek with the maple syrup mouth I'd known for years and headed out with her gym bag and the black sport band on her wrist. And I stared at the plate where her pancake steam made little ghosts. At lunch, Tyler texted a photo of a busted condenser fan with the caption, "Friday vibes." And I typed a joke about him needing to retire, and we went on playing our parts. That afternoon, a contractor out in Plano asked me if I knew a good drywall guy, and I almost said, "I know a good liar," but instead sent him Tyler's number because I wasn't ready to set fire to the house just because I smelled smoke. The foreshadowing, if you're asking, was everywhere once I let myself see it. the half-finished bottle of that French perfume draining faster than usual, the charger she kept forgetting at work, and the one she kept in her car, which is how I learned she'd started plugging in at weird hours. The way Tyler stopped grabbing beers with me after pickup basketball because he had to swing by a client's place, and the way Aaron started calling me baby more often, like a salve you apply to a burn you don't want to look at. I felt my life narrowing to a point, like the focusing of a beam. The old us, the pancakes, the football games, the cookouts, was still there, smiling for pictures, but it had a double exposed underneath, a ghost image I couldn't unsee. And through it all, I held on to a dumb pride. I wasn't going to blow this up on a hunch. I'd been poor, I'd been heartbroken, I'd been wrong, but I'd never been sloppy. The night everything tipped from theory into gravity started, like so many small disasters, with kindness. Aaron texted at 5:06 p.m. "Running late, Kate's birthday drinks. Don't wait up. Love you." I thumbs-upped the message, microwaved leftover chili, and flipped on ESPN with the sound low. Around 9, I went to the garage to grab a spare light bulb, and my eye caught the corner of a cardboard box labeled X-Mess Cords. It wasn't the box, it was the sheet of printer paper taped to the inside of the lid, folded once, like a note you slip to a friend in homeroom. I hadn't put it there. I knew I hadn't. The tape was Aaron's washi style with little gold dots. I stood with my hand on the lid, heart ratcheting up, and then the motion light blinked on and off like a wink. I told myself, leave it, be a man who doesn't snoop. I stepped back, closed the garage, made a cup of coffee I didn't need, sat at the kitchen table with peaches in my lap and the kind of silence you can drink like iced water. At 9:43 p.m., Tyler texted, "You up?" And that was when the last of my good faith slid to one side like a dresser on a moving truck. I went back out to the garage, lifted the lid, and unfolded the paper with hands that shook so gently I could have claimed a draft. It was a receipt, 2, actually, stapled together. A boutique hotel off Greenville, a room number, a charge for room service burgers, and a bottle of Malbec. 2 signatures at the bottom, one a messy scrawl I knew as well as my own, the other Aaron's neat hand curled into a careful E. And just as I opened my mouth in an empty garage to say something like a prayer, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number that sent my stomach through the floor. "If you want to know the truth, check your porch camera at 1:12 a.m. last Thursday." I didn't sleep that night. The paper with the stapled receipt sat on the kitchen counter like a ticking clock, and every time I tried to close my eyes, I saw the messy scrawl of Tyler's name overlapping Aaron's neat signature, like they'd both leaned over the same counter to check out and didn't care who saw. My coffee pot hissed through 3 full cycles, the taste of burnt grounds coating my tongue, and Peaches paced the floor like she could sense the static in my veins. When the sun rose over our cul-de-sac, painting the cracked sidewalks a soft orange, I had one thought clearer than all the rest. I wasn't crazy anymore. I drove to work with the receipts folded into my wallet, tighter than a winning lottery ticket. The HVAC distributor's warehouse smelled of metal, dust, and the faint sweetness of antifreeze. But all I could think about was that text. "If you want to know the truth, check your porch camera at 1:12 a.m. last Thursday." The porch camera, we'd installed it 2 years back after a rash of break-ins in Plano. I barely used the thing. It sent motion alerts for every UPS package and neighbor's cat. But I knew it stored footage in the cloud. So, that morning, instead of calling contractors and haggling over units, I logged into the app and scrubbed back to the exact time. My hands shook as I hit play. At first, nothing, just the hazy glow of the street lamp and the outline of Tyler's F-150 idling across the street. Then, movement. Erin, barefoot, hair pulled back, stepping lightly onto the porch in her robe. She didn't look scared or annoyed. She looked expectant. She tapped her phone, glanced toward the truck, and then, God help me, she walked down the steps and disappeared into the shadows toward him. The camera caught only silhouettes, a lean forward, a half-second embrace, and then the two of them slipping out of frame. My throat went dry. I rewound, played it again, this time pausing frame by frame like I was some detective in a crime lab instead of a husband watching his life tilt off its axis. I wanted to storm into her office right then, but a small, cold voice inside me said, "You don't have enough, not yet. They'll lie, they'll twist, they'll say you're paranoid." And I knew it was true. Aaron was quick with words, Tyler even quicker, and together they could turn suspicion into comedy at my expense. I needed evidence that didn't argue back. So I became someone I didn't recognize. At lunch, I drove to Best Buy and bought a second set of cameras. Tiny, wireless, the kind you can stick in a lamp base or behind a photo frame. That night, while Erin showered, I slipped one into the bookshelf in our living room, another in the garage where she parked her car, and one more in the guest room that had mysteriously become her yoga space. I felt like a traitor in my own home, but what else do you do when the two people you love most might be making a fool of you under your own roof? The first week gave me nothing but silence. Erin stretching alone, scrolling her phone, yawning into a glass of wine. I almost convinced myself I'd crossed into insanity. Then, on a Tuesday night, the living room cam caught her at 11:27 p.m., phone pressed to her ear, whispering in a tone I hadn't heard since the days we used to fall asleep talking in the dark. "I miss you too," she said, her voice light, like she was floating. "Same time tomorrow, okay?" She leaned back against the couch cushion, smiling at something I couldn't hear. The next day, I checked her car's mileage before I left for work. 22,347. That night, she said she was meeting the girls for trivia. When she came home at midnight, giggling as if she'd already rehearsed joy, I checked again. 22,387. 40 miles gone, trivia night was at a pub 5 minutes away. My notes app became a graveyard of timestamps and numbers. Credit card charges at odd hotels. Gas receipts left folded in her purse. iMessages that sometimes pinged on the iPad we rarely used. Flashes of Tyler's name followed by ellipses before the thread vanished. I screenshotted everything, tucked it into a hidden folder, building a case like a prosecutor. But nothing compared to the night I followed her. She said she was running late at the office, a big order that had to be filed before morning. I nodded, kissed her cheek, and waited 10 minutes before sliding into my truck. I tailed her 2 exits down the highway, headlights off, heart hammering. She pulled into the very hotel from the receipts, the boutique one off Greenville, the one with the wine charges. I parked across the street, sweat slicking the back of my neck, and watched her walk in. 30 minutes later, Tyler's truck rolled into the lot. It was the kind of moment where every doubt you've swallowed rises at once, choking you. I sat there gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles burned, stunning as they disappeared into the lobby. I thought about barging in, dragging them out into the night, making a scene loud enough to rattle the windows. But again, that cold voice in me whispered, "Not yet. Make it undeniable. Make it permanent." So I drove home instead, every mile buzzing like a power line, and when Erin crawled into bed hours later smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine, I kept my eyes closed and pretended to dream. The next morning, while she showered, I slipped her phone off the charger and plugged it into my laptop with a cable I'd ordered. A sync app churned quietly, copying everything it could. Texts, photos, even deleted ones. What I saw froze me. Hidden albums of selfies, some hers, some his. Screenshots of calendar invites titled "Workout" at times that matched the hotel receipts. One thread of messages that made my stomach drop. "Tyler, last night was perfect. Can't believe we pulled it off again. Erin, he'll never know. He trusts us too much." My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the laptop. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This wasn't shadows. It was betrayal, typed in plain English, time-stamped, undeniable. And yet, when she came downstairs in her robe, hair damp, humming some pop song, she kissed my cheek like always and said, "Big day today, huh?" as if nothing had detonated. I smiled back because for the first time, I knew something she didn't. The mask was about to slip. And I had all the proof I needed to make it explode. I spent the next 2 days rehearsing it in my head like a courtroom drama. Every word, every angle, every expression I'd let cross my face. But life has a way of writing its own script, and when the truth finally cracked open, it wasn't in the tidy, controlled setting I imagined. It was messy, raw, and loud enough that the whole damn world seemed to stop and watch. It was a Friday evening in June, one of those Texas nights where the heat doesn't back down even after the sun drops, just hangs in the air like a wet towel. Erin had begged me to come to a dinner with some of her coworkers at a steakhouse in downtown Dallas. Fancy, white tablecloths, valet parking, the kind of place where they don't even print prices on the menu. I almost declined, but something in me said this was the stage. This was where masks would slip without me having to rip them off. Tyler was there too, of course. Supposedly invited as a +1 for one of Erin's friends from accounting, but we all knew better. He walked in wearing a starched shirt, flashing that same easy grin he'd used to charm coaches, teachers, girlfriends, all of us, really. I sat at the end of the table with a bourbon sweating in my hand, watching the two of them orbit each other like magnets that thought they were subtle. For most of the meal, I played my part, polite husband, nodding along to jokes, cutting into a ribeye that tasted like cardboard in my mouth. Aaron laughed too loud at Tyler's stories. Tyler brushed his hand against her chair when he leaned in. My coworkers used to say I had the patience of a mechanic, steady, methodical, but that night, every nerve in me buzzed like an engine about to seize. Then came the moment. Dessert menus on the table, the waiter asking about coffee, and Tyler cracked a joke about how Aaron always needed her late-night pick-me-up. A throwaway line to anyone else, but her cheeks flushed pink, and I saw the way her eyes darted. First to him, then away, like a guilty kid hiding candy. I set my glass down harder than I meant to. The sound cut through the chatter, and suddenly half the table looked my way. "You know," I said, my voice steady but cold. "Funny thing about late nights." I pulled my phone out, tapped the screen, and turned it toward them. The porch camera footage played on loop. Erin in her robe, slipping off the porch, moving toward Tyler's idling truck at 1:12 a.m. The room went silent, forks clinking against plates as if even they were stunned. Erin's face drained of color. Tyler shifted back in his chair, eyes flicking to the exit like a man sizing up a fire escape. Someone at the far end muttered, "Jesus." "Want me to run it again?" I asked, thumb hovering. "Or maybe you'd prefer the hotel receipts with both your signatures. Or hell, maybe the text where you said I'd never know." Erin stammered, It's not what you think." "Don't insult me," I snapped, louder now. Heads turned from nearby tables. The waiter froze mid-pour with a carafe of coffee, unsure if he should retreat. "I've got months of this. Receipts, photos, messages. You two thought you were slick, sneaking around, laughing behind my back. My best friend and my wife. You think Dallas is big enough to hide in? It's not." Tyler finally found his voice, trying for calm. "Man, you're overreacting. You're twisting things." "Overreacting?" I cut him off. "You spent years in my house, at my table, drinking my beer, holding my kids' drawings like you were family. And all the while, you were sneaking into her bed when my back was turned. That's not overreacting, Tyler. That's betrayal." The word landed heavy, like a gavel striking wood. The diners around us were openly staring now, phones tilted in subtle angles, some recording. Erin reached for my hand across the table, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Please, not here, not like this," she whispered. But I pulled my hand back, as if her touch burned. "No, Erin, exactly like this. You wanted secret nights and hidden texts? Here's daylight. Here's everyone watching." Her sobs grew louder, and she buried her face in her hands. Tyler muttered something under his breath. "This is insane." But when I turned the screen to him again, showing the selfie of the two of them in that hotel room, his mouth snapped shut. "You humiliated yourself," I said, standing now, my chair scraping across the hardwood. "You chose this, both of you, and I'm done playing the fool." I tossed a stack of printed receipts onto the table, the ones I'd kept in a manila folder for weeks. They scattered across the linen, some fluttering into plates of half-eaten dessert. Erin's coworkers gasped, one of them pulling her phone closer to record. The image was obscene in its banality. A white tablecloth covered not in wine or food, but in evidence. Betrayal laid bare like exhibits in a trial. Erin choked out, "We can fix this!" But I shook my head. "No, Erin. You broke it. And Tyler," I pointed at him, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You broke me, and I promise you this isn't the end. You'll both feel the weight of what you've done. In court, in life, everywhere." Then I turned, pulled a couple bills from my wallet, dropped them by the bourbon glass, and walked out into the Texas night. Behind me, the sound of chaos rose, voices, sobs, the clink of receipts being gathered like ashes. As the valet handed me my keys, I heard someone shout my name from the restaurant door. I didn't turn around. I slid into my truck, started the engine, and drove into the thick summer air, every muscle trembling with the realization that the secret wasn't secret anymore. But deep down, I knew this was just the opening shot. The real war, divorce papers, custody, assets, reputations, was still waiting to detonate. The morning after the steakhouse confrontation, I woke up on my brother's couch with a stiff neck, a sour stomach, and the kind of silence that feels earned. My phone was lit up with notifications, missed calls from Erin, texts from numbers I didn't recognize, probably her coworkers passing judgment in group chats. Tyler had sent exactly one message: "We need to talk." I didn't reply. I just stared at it, the little preview glowing on the cracked screen, and thought about all the years I'd spent calling him my brother. Now the word tasted rotten. Divorce wasn't some dramatic thunderclap that happened overnight. It was paperwork, signatures, hours in lawyers' offices that smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet. Erin tried at first to bargain, begged me to consider counseling, said what they had was a mistake that went too far. But the texts and receipts made counseling laughable. My attorney slid them across the polished wood table like aces in a poker game, and her face crumpled in a way that told me she knew the battle was already lost. In Texas, adultery still has teeth in divorce court. Her lawyer tried to argue we should move forward amicably, but the judge wasn't buying it once the evidence folder landed on his desk. Custody of our daughter went to me, the house too, since Erin had been sneaking around in it for years like it was some cheap motel. She got visitation, supervised at first, and a slice of savings small enough to sting but not enough to sink me. Tyler? He didn't show up in court, though his shadow hung over every proceeding like smoke you can't fan away. The hardest part wasn't the money or even the paperwork. It was explaining to my daughter why mommy didn't live at home anymore. I didn't give her the details. Kids don't need that poison. But I told her the truth in a way she could carry. Sometimes, sweetheart, people make choices that hurt others. And when that happens, we have to protect the ones we love. She nodded, then handed me a crayon drawing of us sitting on the porch with Peaches the cat, the sun drawn too big, smiling across the page. I stuck it on the fridge like a medal. Healing came in pieces, not waves. Saturday mornings flipping pancakes without anyone to sprinkle chocolate chips but her. Evenings on the porch with a cold Bud Light, the hum of cicadas filling the space Erin's laugh used to take up. Cowboys games with my daughter curled against me, asking why the refs were blind again, and me telling her that some things in life will always be unfair, but you still show up and play. I let ESPN run late into the night, the familiar rhythm of voices anchoring me in something that wasn't betrayal. Tyler? He vanished, at least from my world. Mutual friends cut ties once the truth spread. Nobody wanted to be the guy who still grilled steaks with the snake who slept with his best friend's wife. I heard rumors that he tried to move to Houston, that his business took a hit, that he and Erin fizzled out once the thrill of secrecy was gone. I didn't follow the details. Some trash takes itself out, and you don't dig through the bags to see where it landed. There were moments, sure, when anger burned hot again. Seeing an old photo pop up on Facebook Memories, me, Erin, and Tyler at a tailgate, arms slung around each other, grinning like fools, or catching a whiff of her old perfume in a grocery aisle and feeling my chest tighten. But time is a stubborn healer. The sharper edges dulled. I learned that forgiveness doesn't mean letting them back in. It means refusing to let their betrayal keep eating at me. One evening in late August, I sat on the porch with my daughter drawing beside me, a soft breeze finally cutting through the heat. She looked up and asked, "Daddy, are we happy now?" I thought about it, about the sleepless nights, the courtroom, the tears. And then I looked at her messy ponytail, the crayons scattered across the table, the cat sprawled at our feet, and I said, "Yeah, sweetheart, we're happier than we were before." Because the truth had exploded, yes, but so had the illusion, and when the dust settled, I wasn't left with ashes. I was left with freedom, with peace, with the clear knowledge that I had walked through betrayal and come out the other side still standing. Life isn't a movie where the credits roll after the big reveal. It's mornings of burnt toast, afternoons of soccer practice, nights of quiet, and in that quiet, I finally found something worth more than revenge or rage. I found peace. And sometimes, peace is just realizing that the trash really does take itself out.